It's Dawn Nicole here, CEO of Queen City Women in Business, and I am so excited about today's discussion because today we're going to be discussing, as a woman-led organization, Queen City Women in Business, we're discussing what it means for a woman to be in the White House, and not just what it means to the US, but what does it mean on a global stage? How does the world change? And I brought two very close colleagues, near and dear friends, peers, women who have a vested interest in this conversation. And so we're going to learn a little bit more about what they do, and then we're going to dig into this discussion. So first and foremost, I'm Dawn Nicole McElwain, CEO of Queen City Women in Business. Queen City Women in Business is really an organization that helps women-owned small businesses connect faster with major organizations. And with me tonight, I have Taja Graham and Allison Martin. Taja, could you start first and tell us a little bit about yourself and your company?
Sure, Dawn Nicole, thank you for having me tonight. My name is Taja Graham. I am the president of TMG Solutions Advisors. It is a business consulting firm where we help business owners with their profits and growing profits. And then also I have the pleasure of getting to work alongside of Dawn Nicole and our executive team as president of the Indiana chapter. So I'm glad to be here tonight.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. And Allison Martin, please tell us, one of our newest QCWIB members. We're so excited to have you, but tell us about you and your company as well.
Dawn Nicole, it's so great to be here as well. I am the founder and managing partner for Engage Mentoring. So what we do at our core is we help companies engage, inspire, and develop their employees through meaningful feedback tied to learning opportunities facilitated by mentors with measurable outcomes. And one of our core programs is actually focused on women. And so I'm really excited to be here tonight. And we recognize that there's just so many drivers for why more women in leadership, and really investing in women's leadership is so critical for organizations. But I'm also a woman founder, and I know my lived experience in that as well. And so I'm just really excited for this discussion tonight.
Same. Awesome. Thank you both for being here. I am totally excited as well. And speaking of this discussion, it was so funny, ladies, because there's all this talk right now about, Kamala Harris this versus Donald Trump. And what we don't want tonight to be about, obviously, is we're not going to go left or right. It's not so much about the political piece of it. And it's not really about race. It's about something that impacts all of us, women being in the White House. There's no shortage of women CEOs leading top companies right now. Right? There's Roz Brewer, there is Tashonda Duckett, I've got some notes, there's Carol Toomey. I mean, there's a whole ton of them, but I want to start with asking you all the first question. Like, do you think it's actually possible? And let me rephrase the first question, and either of you can answer. So we know that Hillary Clinton ran in 2016, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but it was 2016 that she was in the primaries and she was going out for presidency. And that was really a different time. Do you all actually think here in 2024, 2025, Kamala could actually do it? VP Harris, I want to hear your thoughts. How is now different from when Hillary ran? And do you think she could actually do it?
Allison, I'll let you start with that.
Well, it's funny that you asked that question because a week ago, I might have had a little bit of a different answer, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I was so thrilled when we had a woman president on the ticket, or a candidate on the ticket back in 2016. And unfortunately, we know
Yeah.
that ended. And I thought, gosh, the world, this country isn't ready for a woman in leadership. And that's a very unfortunate sentiment, but that was the overwhelming feeling that I had. It has been amazing to see the groundswell of support. I feel like the time is here. And so the short answer to your question is yes, I absolutely do think she's got a chance at winning. And I have been so encouraged, particularly by the women who have come out to support her.
Yeah.
And just, again, it feels so timely and critical as well, given the issues that are present in this campaign.
I love that. No, great answer. I feel the same way. Taja, I want to hear from you too. Do you think there's actually a chance right now?
I have very similar sentiments and a journey similar to Allison, but I will tell you that I was one of the 44 that was a part of a very massive Zoom call of women voters all across the country when this was announced to give our pledge to supporting Kamala in this moment, and to see the variety of women and where they came from and to raise $1.3 million in one night's time to support this campaign really gave me the energy to say, yeah, this can absolutely happen. And to know that this has been going on, not just with that group, but there's been several other groups that have hopped on these Zoom calls and made these type of commitments, both verbally and financially. I mean, we already see the numbers as to what her fundraising is. So that's evident that I do feel confident that she has what it's going to take to really pull this off.
Yeah, I love that answer. And I feel the same way because my husband reminded me, he goes, well, this isn't quite the first time that a woman ran. And I get that, but there's something different, right? Wouldn't you both agree that there's something different right now? And while there's all these conversations around who's best and who's done this and who has a track record, for me, my take on it is I think we're ready for just something new. I think when you look at what we were just up against, like you said a week ago, Allison, I think Kamala Harris, VP Kamala Harris has re-energized the party and really re-energized the country almost to a point where you're saying, where was all of this 2 weeks ago, a week ago? And I think it's evident that it has awakened something that was dormant. And it kind of tells me that give a woman a purpose, because you'll have people who will say, where was she? She was VP for almost 4 years now, and I haven't seen her, and what I've seen hasn't. And I think and you all know how women are. If you, it's, and we've both been here in companies, right? If you don't give us a role, like an active role with an app, yeah, you can give us a title. Ooh, this is good. You can give a woman a title, but when you give her an active role that she can step up to, watch us work. And I think that's what just happened, right? Would you say that this switch, Biden pulling out and saying, okay, it's yours, let's see what you do with it? Did you notice something clicked, like something happened? Let's talk about that.
Well, I think it's created an energy that wasn't present, right? And so, and as I look at my feed, and I've got friends and loved ones in sort of both camps, if you will. And what it struck me was before Kamala came on the scene, there were a lot of supporters of the Republican candidate, and then there was everyone else who was supporting the Democratic candidate was still talking about the Republican candidate. So everyone was still talking about him, right?
Yeah.
So they were talking about him because they supported him, or they were talking about him because they had this strong distaste. They were talking about what he did today and all these other things, but nobody was really talking about their candidate as being one that they were really excited about and supporting in such a way that was energizing. And that's what shifted, in my opinion. As soon as she came on the scene, there was this groundswell of new energy and enthusiasm for someone who really represents the values of what people really hold close and hold dear. And at a time where we are just so polarized on the issues, and those who care about the issues, the snippets that I've seen that they've come out with in the campaign. Yeah, I didn't see those for 4 years. A lot of us didn't. Yeah. And so it's like, where has she been? We were so excited 4 years ago, and then we hadn't really seen a whole lot. But what I'm seeing now, she has been working on our behalf. She has been taking on tough issues. She doesn't mince words when she speaks, and she's really inspiring. And I'm aligned with how she stands on the majority of the issues. And so it's just been really energizing to have a candidate that we can just hold up and be really excited about. Instead, I believe in speaking into the universe what we want.
Yeah.
We're talking about what we don't want. And I felt like the party was talking a lot about what they didn't want instead of what we want. And now that's been the shift, in my opinion.
I love it. Taja, what about you? Have you seen this new energy or what? Yeah.
Absolutely. I think anytime you are able to bring a female leader into a room to actually lead, there comes that energy and nurturing. We're really in tune with the abilities to mobilize and get people surrounded around a common cause. That is innately, I feel, in women to do.
Yeah.
And so, and then the other side of the coin, unfortunately, is we also have a level of respect for what is leadership and authority above us, right? So we understand how to not become docile, but to respect the role that we play in, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why it wasn't for her, in my opinion, to be that front runner at the time when Biden was still running,
that wasn't,
right? It wasn't the way, that's just not how we are as women. Right.
No.
But the moment you switch the paradigm and say, no, you are it, we know how to come with that energy and we know how to unite people.
I love that you said that. I want to tell a short story that I think is so relevant here. It's funny that you say, Taja, and you kind of alluded to this as well, Allison, that she did what she needed to do. She was in a different role, right? And then we saw something completely switch, and she showed up. And I'm looking at that because I think we're looking at how, how did you show up and context switch in the last, 48, 72 hours? And she's shown improve. And that's also what you look for in a leader, right? I know people have their thoughts about the border, and we'll get into this later about leading a company and not being good at all things, but are you good at the right thing, right? That's a whole different discussion I want to get into. But real fast, you said something that I thought was key. So I remember being in a high level position at a high level consulting firm. I won't name the firm. And I remember I got promoted, and I got promoted unexpectedly. It was one of these things where the male leader was going to be leaving. He had given his notice, and the next best person, right, that was closest, that I had done well, I had proven myself on this side. They said, Donna Cole, would you like this opportunity? And I said, sure. And they had basically sold it to me. They basically said it's mine. But there was one caveat, ladies. They said that, well, he's leaving pretty quickly next week, but he's written in his resignation that he's going to stay on board for light touch and support. And I thought, and I remember, and this gets good. I'm going to get to, and I remember, and so you're a woman, and you're still new, proving yourself, and we don't want to cause trouble. We don't know what to, right? We don't want to get ourselves sort of kicked out of the opportunity before we get started. But I remember how I felt the moment that it was sort of implied that I needed this hand holding, right? This micromanagement. I mean, this guy was going to be at an entirely different company, but had literally written he'd circle back every day at 4 or 5 to check on me. Can you imagine? And I remember thinking, no one thinks there's anything wrong. Like the men who delivered this information, they was like, so you should be fine. And I was thinking, you don't see anything wrong with this. And so I remember my first week, this is true story, my first week trying to show up in excellence to gain the trust of this new relationship of the people I'd be working with, who were global leaders, by the way, in a whole different country. And I remember that as long as he was there and he was present, there wasn't enough room for both of us at the same time. And I'm bringing up this story because it reminds me of how Vice President Kamala must have said, okay, let me stand down and let this, it's either you or me in this position at this moment, right? But we can't both share this space because it's not meant. Anyway, long story short, I remember at the end of the week, I stood up for myself, and I went to the people who gave me the promotion, and I said, listen, I'm good at what I can do. I know what I'm good at. I don't need to be babysat. If you want him, then you get him. If you want me, it has to be all me, because I'm not able to build a relationship to gain trust. They will not trust me and see me as long as he's around. And I remember standing up for myself and making them go back and make that decision. And they said bye-bye to him. And I remember excelling in that role. And it was the best thing I'd ever done. So I want to speak to that, because when people say, well, where was this for 4 years? We didn't see this, right? It's really, we're not designed to coexist. It's either you get me right now, this is my time, or your time, but we got to choose. So I love that.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I share a
Yeah.
similar story
Yeah.
to that as well, Donna Nicole. Prior to my having my own business, I was called on to run a pretty significant media group, and I made it clear when they selected me to be the next to serve as the market president. I said, I'm not like the others that came before me,
Yeah.
which had been primarily males
Yeah.
and primarily white males. These
Yeah. Yeah.
very distinctively
Yeah.
clear. So I wanted to make it clear, I'm not one of those that is going to, just kind of play the same textbook play
Right.
that has been before us. There's going to be some changes. But the significance, I believe, of why it was time for me to take on that role,
Hmm.
because there was an incident that was happening in our society
Yeah.
that he could not address. And that was
Ah.
during the time of George Floyd.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
therefore, it called for someone who could do the nurturing
Yes.
as well as bring a collaborative spirit of energy together to
Yeah.
speak on that topic. And
Yeah.
I knew it had to be me. So it wasn't that somebody asked me to do it. I
Yeah.
knew that I needed to be the one to do it. That's the leadership that
Yes.
comes in you, right? That says, wait a
Yeah.
minute, this isn't for him to do.
Yeah.
This is for me to do. And in that, came this opportunity to take on a bigger role, which was the market president. But I think for even she recognizes, okay, this isn't for him to do.
Right.
It is for my calling in this time, in this present,
Yes, this time.
for me to be doing this, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when that happens, it brings in a whole nother level that it's already in you. You've been prepared, you know what to do, you know what to say, how to go about it. Now it's time to put it on, right? Now it's time to
Yeah.
take action. Yeah.
I love it. Oh my gosh, so many good things to unpack here. Okay, so ladies, I'm going to switch gears for a second, and I want to talk about the attacks, right, on VP Kamala Harris. I'm trying to be respectful and make sure she's still our vice president. I want to talk about the attacks because what's interesting is the attacks on her character. I don't know if they're specific to her or just nature of womanhood. And what I mean is like, so some of the attacks have been, oh, she laughs a lot, she smiles, right? And I was just telling my husband earlier, I said, what's really interesting is to watch how our natural, innate, many of us, our mannerisms as women will transcend. And will they be attacked, or will the world adapt? Will we have to stop being, if you're a friendly personality, if you're the type of woman who starts a meeting with a, well, good morning. You know how some of us have that personality and we're taught to be polite and pleasant. And some of it is just the nature of us as women. We smile, right? If you had a mom like me, smile, what are you doing? Right? The camera, right? And so I want to know, do you think that these are really personal to Kamala Harris, VP Harris, or is it about some of this is just being a woman? And how will she need to change this? Do you think she needs to change this to gain the respect, or would the world look to accommodate for a woman in presidency? I want to hear your thoughts on all of this. Allison, let's start with you. Yeah.
I've got plenty to say on that.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I believe history has shown, and this plays out in the workplaces daily, and as being a woman founder, that women face a much greater degree of scrutiny on nuanced things like you're describing, that are absolutely inconsequential and also very open to, they're subjective anyway, right? I happen to love her laugh personally.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, but it also, in my opinion, is indicative of the fact that they're grasping at straws, right?
Yeah.
And so if that's their criticism, okay.
Yeah.
And
That's all you got? Yeah.
but it also, I think, is just universally women are face greater scrutiny. You're supposed to look this way or behave this way or dress this way or not act this way. Or, we know that universally, if you're more assertive as a woman, you're known one way. But if a man had that same behavior, that he would be recognized for being a leader,
Yeah.
right? And so she's going to face that. She has faced that. She's going to continue to face that. And I believe that she just needs to show up as her authentic self and
Yes.
recognize that that the right people are going to support her for having the right voice. We were talking about the timing earlier as well, and she has the voice that we need, in my opinion, on the issues that are present, and even the way that these things are being thrown at her. A lot of what's coming out is really attacks on women in general, right? In a variety of different things that have been coming out. And so so the answer from my perspective is yeah, she's going to face that. But if that's all they got.
Yeah, then that's a pretty poor case if it's just her laugh. That's the criticism. Really, really good feedback. Thank you. Taja, what about you? What are you thinking here when you hear this?
The deflections always take precedence, and that definitely demonstrates that they have nothing really of substance to come against her. If they did, they should have had it within 24 hours of the announcement.
Yeah.
That should have been exactly what they led with. I'm not a political savant, but I do like following. I'm a political junkie, and so you kind of see up front what's going to happen. Um, you know, has she come with some issues, be it various bills that she's passed or things like that? Yeah. And then again, they should have had it in that. But if we're going to talk about laughter and hair color or whatever
Yeah.
that is, we have thick skin as women
Yeah.
in dealing with that. So I do believe she will stick. I mean, she is legitly legally at heart. And so
Hmm.
she will stick to the issues and speaking to those issues. And I feel very confident that she'll win that she will win the debate. That is one thing I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to seeing. But I think she will win that debate. And I think that we need to be able, as we look to the future, allow for that authenticity to take place because there's another group, a legacy that's coming behind her. And we want them to continue to feel
Yes.
comfortable in feeling authentically themselves,
Yeah.
right? This young generation needs to know it's okay to smile and
Yeah.
laugh.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, you know, and be women. It is
Yes.
okay for us to be genuinely who we are.
And I think, oddly enough, it's interesting because I think initially that worked against her. I remember when she first came out with the pearls and the tennis shoes, remember?
Mhm.
And people were saying, "Oh my gosh, what?" And now we're so desperate for someone to be their authentic selves. We don't know what to do. Anything but what we've been through, right? We can all agree. And I will tell you, I would want to have this discussion even if there was a woman running for office on the Republican side. I'm interested in how a woman in office can and will change the world. And that is really the crux of this conversation. And so let me ask you a question. You mentioned about legacy and the future legacy. Ladies, how do you think a woman being in office changes the game for future women? I mean, I already talked about some of the CEOs that we have, like Jane Fraser, who's CEO of Citigroup and other, but it's one thing to be the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, and then it's the other to be chairwoman, right, in presidency of our entire United States. How do you think this changes for future generations? What could this mean for young girls and women looking at their own future, seeing themselves? How will this impact? What do you think that would look like?
Yeah, I think a couple of things start to take
Yeah,
shape. I
yeah,
think that when you have a woman's presence in leadership at that level, specifically even,
yeah,
there's this now, I see myself
mhm,
and I feel I can obtain, be it at that level or at another level. It gives you the confidence to say, I can do that.
yeah,
In my humble role of market president, when women would see me and young women, because I made it a point of being in connection with those
mhm,
that were in the college level, collegiate level, or high school level, they were like, oh wow, you actually are doing that role. Oh, and I can do it too, like
yeah.
I can serve in that role. So I think that we're going to see a lot more of that goal setting,
Yeah,
stretching ourselves to do bigger and better things, as a result of her presence.
awesome. No, that's great. Allison, what about you?
Yeah, I agree with Taja. I think seeing what's possible and being
Yes.
and inspiring is immediately what comes to mind. And despite the shining examples of people that you've shared, Don Nicole, there still is a huge gap as it relates to
Yes.
women in leadership across the country today. So less than 25% of senior leadership roles are still occupied by women yet today. And we also know, based on research, that I think it's 606 million women go home to an average of 5 hours of caregiving in the evening. So they're working their day jobs and
Yeah.
going home to a second shift in the evening, which makes it difficult to build a network and to do all the things to really help them advance. And there's also a point where they say, enough, I can't do anymore. I can't take that next level. And so I think inspiring to see what's possible, but really changing the dialogue. And I think sometimes the powerful assumptions that are made in the boardroom about who is promotable based
Yeah.
on their family constraints, because I know in my own lived experience, I've had that. I've had to defend my ability to move up in an organization because I had small children at home. And I should never have to have had
No.
that conversation. And I know I've heard so many lived experiences that are similar, right? And so I think changing the narrative, and changing, I think, in the minds of others who are making those decisions, to recognize that women can lead,
Yeah.
women are fully capable of leading, and that we don't have to overlook women who are promising for promotion opportunities, and let them decide, let them be the ones
Absolutely.
to really sort of make that decision. And again, it's inspiring a
Yes.
generation of women who can look up and see a shining example of someone who looks like them, and to realize what's possible. And that's what and again, it has nothing to do with the party.
Yeah.
I'm really invigorated by that, and it would be
Me
true on
too.
either side, to be
Yeah.
very candid with you. That I didn't think I would would get to see this in my lifetime. And now I have renewed hope that I might get to see it. And I'm excited for my daughter and the generation that she represents as well.
I love that. I think you both put it so eloquently. I'm going to share my feedback on this one because I will tell you, I don't even have to envision. I've seen and I've been listening and watching the news, watching the media, keeping my ear to the street. And there are already 4 ways. And these are just 4 ways that since the announcement, we've seen a shift in women, particularly in the impact of Kamala Harris. One way is that women who are never interested in politics are now leaning in, right? They're watching it like a great, match of sorts. And they're saying, what is this really? It's been, it's gone over my head for years, but now I'm interested. I'm in the game because like you said, they see themselves in this. So number one, there's a renewed interest in politics. And for some, a first time. Number two, many of these women who didn't vote before will be voting. Number three, many of these women who never donated to a campaign have just donated. I think if you've been watching the news, I've heard many stories of women saying, this was my first time donating, right? And then I think number four, there will be, in fact, women who will start to prime and position themselves for a future in politics because of this. So we're already seeing the very early effects of what this could be. And speaking of changes and evolution, now I want to get into her husband. I want to get into how the world has already started to adapt because let's be clear, VP Kamala Harris already made history a few times, right? She first made history in California when she became governor. I think it was first, was it not woman governor, but
served as attorney general or
attorney general.
Prosecutor. Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
History making in California for sure.
Yes, thank you for and then she made history again with the Biden-Harris campaign when she came on as first lady, VP, our first vice president. But what does this mean? So let's talk about the impact of her husband. He's now the first gentleman, correct? He's not the second. He's now considered first gentleman. Where Jill Biden is first lady, obviously, but this wasn't written in the history books. I don't think our forefathers, I don't think people had the foresight then to realize that there would be a male who is a spouse to someone, right? So that wasn't even written, which means things had to be rewritten to make room for him, which is pretty powerful. But what else do you think will change? And I'll start because I actually did some research and I was very interested to see, okay, we're now calling him second gentleman or first gentleman. It's so confused, right? He's first gentleman, right? But what else has to change on a national scale? Well, here's some things I was looking up that you'd be interested in. So from a US-based aspect, we'd have to change norms or wording like we no longer will say Mr. President. You know how there was even a song, I think Marilyn Monroe sung Mr. President, so it's no longer the formality of Mr. President. And even if you go to the code book I read, it's really about the suit and the tie, right? It's for men's clothing. So it will have to be adjusted because a woman in office means she's probably going to wear a skirt suit or a dress sometimes. Then I was looking at global impacts, and this might interest you. There are some customs globally where only males hand out rewards or the seating at a table, or in Japan and in other places, not Japan, but in France where they kiss on the cheek. I was reading that might need to change to accommodate, to be a little bit more inclusive. But what else do you all think might have to change? Like when you really think about a woman being in office now, what are some other things that were historically skewed towards men that may have to change?
Well, I'll go kind of crazy with it a little.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that they're preparing the restroom in the Oval Office for a woman.
I didn't even think about that.
Be honest about it. I mean,
Yeah.
no, I kind of when thinking about this isn't the first time in history that this has happened. It will be the first for our country. However, if you will recall, June 2nd of 1953, at the coronation of Queen Elizabeth, that was a paradigm shift of male versus female dynamic for sure.
That's right.
And since she took coordination or became queen, You know, even the song God Bless the King had to change to God Bless the Queen. We've said that now for how many ages now, that it was hard when King Charles took office to take it back. It was like, oh my,
That's
I
true.
don't know how to sing this now, you know? So you know, there's definitely those nuances will be addressed. But this has been an ongoing theme. If you look through the history, again, beyond just internationally, there are women that are leading at that level, that continue to lead, you know, that. So I think that that even though we're looking at it in the bubble of the US,
Yeah.
I think internationally
Yeah.
there has been some acceptance
That's
and some
true.
understanding as to how to recognize that. So we'll see if
Yeah.
they, you know, genuinely approach it that way. But I think that internationally they're ready for what will be a female president of the United States.
Very interesting. Allison, what about you? Do you have a take on just like what, how this will change some cultural or historic norms?
I agree. I believe internationally the president has been set, and in our within our own country, it's going to be interesting for sure because there are some nuances that are different between the way that men and women do business as a whole.
Yeah.
And just even I mean stereotypically yes, but just in terms of how we show up in some of the behaviors and hobbies and all the things
All of
that
it.
I'll be curious to see how what adjustments would be made, right? To depending on what her particular stance is on some of those things and the way that businesses has been carried out up until now. I'll also be really curious to see how her husband shows up and what kind of platform he has as the nation's first gentleman, because we have some really strong historically first ladies
Yeah.
that have taken on some really incredible platforms and have shown up in really powerful ways. And I'm hoping that he comes right along with her. But the last thing that occurs to me is I think it's also a shining example of how really things should be within the household,
Yes.
in terms of supporting one another's ambitions, right? And being able to take a second step and where needed and those types of things. And that doesn't always happen. So I really applaud that as a shining example to again recognize that, going back to what I said earlier, so many women are they're moving into executive roles, but they're still taking on the bulk of the domestic responsibilities outside of that. And I think that the call to all of us is to have a voice and to really have with our significant others or spouses about what our ambitions are, and to divide those things accordingly, and not just take them on. And I'm certain that's what she's done, and I feel like it's a shining example that we can all really look up to and admire. And I can't wait to see what happens, assuming she takes over the presidency in January.
I love it. And speaking, you hit so many points that I just want to touch on too. It's interesting that you talked about her husband because as we probably all read and learned, he is a very successful attorney with his own practice. And from what I understand, he kept that practice going. But recently, the moment the announcement was made, I don't know if you read this and saw this, but he took it about face and kind of stepped down. Now, I don't know the particulars on, I'm not saying the doors are closed. If he's like me, I'm having someone else run it. I'm keeping that business going, but that's just the businesswoman in me. But what he is going to do, he wants to focus on supporting this campaign full time, his wife, obviously in the campaign. And I respect that so much because just imagine having your own successful career as a man, as a husband, and then having to sort of really figure out how to be there completely and holistically for your wife. And I also read that it's not like he's going to be dormant. He's going to be contributing those legal skills to the campaign, which I loved. I think that's so smart, right? Like whatever my husband was doing before, we're going to figure out how to collaborate and contribute to the campaign. But you also said something else too about us leading differently. And I want to go there. I want to talk about how we're different leaders. And I want to start with, and I think we could be here all night on this one, but let's talk about the media's portrayal. Because we know, and we've already seen it, when you have a man in leadership, a male figure, and then you have a woman, I believe, and I've seen this, you probably have too, the media portrays them differently. They
Mhm.
have buzzwords that are unique to men and then unique to women. And that kind of becomes the narrative. And we've already seen, right, where the media has sort of implied, VP Kamala Harris has, slept her way. And they always do that for women. But think about it, they would never, that wouldn't even make sense for a man. Like they just like really imagine them saying Trump slept his way to the top. You'd laugh. What do you? It doesn't even fit because in society it's such a double standard. They don't even use that narrative for men, right? Have you noticed this, like the media's portrayal? Yeah.
Well, and it's so ingrained in all of us, having been raised and grown up in a patriarchal society, we catch ourselves sometimes with those little nuances as
Yep.
well. And it's ingrained within all of us. So we can't point to any one outlet and say, you can't, but it is a stark difference.
Yeah.
Both in when you look at her past and her record and her relationships and compare them side by side, there is no comparison. And yet she's the one who's scrutinized.
Yeah. Yeah. Tasha, I know you have some big.
Yeah, I have a lot to say on this, having been in media for over 20 plus years.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's going to need to be a shift and
Yeah.
some balance in coverage to support and protect her.
Yeah.
Protect her.
Mm.
We know media has a very strong hold in how things can happen in society, just in what we cover and how we cover it. So
Hmm.
I'm hoping that if any of my friends in the space, especially those in the newsrooms, are hearing this, that they really take responsibility in how they convey the stories. It is very important that this is the time that that is addressed. So all the news directors need to be on the same page now as to how they're going to handle that. Because there is this need of balance and protection to what is to come.
Yeah.
And that really it strikes me. I do have a lot of concern there.
Yeah.
Knowing media oftentimes is used to incite
Yeah.
various sides.
Yeah.
So this is a time where we really need to buckle down and really be stringent on, let's tamper what the inciting is about, and let's really be more factual in conveying what are true storylines.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that because like I said, I noticed and I saw the same thing with the Kate with the wife of not Harry but
Okay, yep.
yes, yes, where they were, because it's a woman, they're studying body language, right? Oh, what is she? Oh, she's upset. Oh, did you hear that in her voice? And so these tendencies, these natural tendencies that we have as women, I wonder how it's going to play out when she has to say something firmly, right? Will she be considered, you know what? Even though a male could say, I'm not going to address that right now. And it's like, oh, okay. But if she says, I'm not going to address that right now, oh, she was in a bad mood today. Did you, and these are the things we deal with as women. And so, with that being the case, I do want to talk about women in our different leadership styles. And is the world ready for that? Is the world, and what I want to start with is just a quick story because I think this always opens up the door. I remember being hired as a coach, and I was working with women leaders who had teams. And I remember that one woman leader in particular had a global team, and she had a team full of men, and they were the global, so they had different customs from all over the world. And what was happening is she didn't feel that they were respecting her because she would open up every day with, good morning, did you all have a good weekend? Great, well, let's get. And every time she was social or nice, they would look at that as, that's weak, right? So I want to talk about our natural tendencies. What do you think will be some challenges that so maybe we don't see them as challenges as women, but that the world might take issue with on the world stage, that are some watch outs? What would when you just think about how women lead, what could be an obstacle that you think she might have to look out for?
I think you shared some of the nuances earlier, but another one that comes to mind is any display of emotion
Yeah.
is immediately scrutinized and criticized. And so that's another one that comes to mind for me. But I believe that she is going to face more scrutiny, unfortunately, than her male predecessors for sure.
I think so too. Yeah. Taja?
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's going to be in how she balances or decide not to and be authentically herself. And I welcome that. I hope that she
Yeah.
does. I don't cry all the time, but I'm emotional, and so therefore I would love to find someone that it can be expressive like that as well. I think again I'm going to bring this up. When the Queen was in office, and at the time, or when she was serving out her being queen, I don't know if you call it an office, but anyhow, when Prince Diana had passed away, remember there was a big issue that she wasn't showing enough emotion.
Yes.
I think the reason why is because she was so conditioned to tamper that, even in her youth, knowing that there's this possibility of, that she couldn't show emotion, which
Yeah.
is right. It's sad that you get to this place where you don't even know how to respond in a time like that, you
Yeah.
know? So I welcome, I hope she does. I hope that we get a good cry in, a good hug now and then. I think it will genuinely demonstrate that we can lead and still be able to nurture and care in a space that is safe.
Yeah. I'm with you. I hear you, but I wonder if the world is ready. I often think back to Sarah Palin. When you remember she was running for VP. And I remember they found a picture on her Facebook, right? And the social media bug comes back to bite you. And there was a picture from a few years prior in this case, and she had a drink in her hand. And I remember they just made a huge spectacle of her. And so I just wonder how VP Kamala Harris will have to guard and protect herself, and protect her peace from the trolls that are coming. Sarah, I'm sorry, were you going to say something, Allison?
No, I was just going to say, I think as a nation, and especially us as women, it's going to become, if you see something, say something, right? So when the
Yeah.
media does, she is going to face more scrutiny. They're going to say things and talk about her in ways that will have absolutely everything to do with her gender, right? And I think that it's incumbent upon us to start. You said the world's not ready, and we need to make the world ready.
That's right.
We need to change a few things, and
That's
I
good.
she's the person to be able to do it.
You know what? I appreciate you saying that, because as we get ready to come to a close, I was watching an interview today and they were interviewing Republican women, and, they're always interviewing both sides. And I heard, and I was so proud, I heard a Republican woman say, while I am, a Trump supporter, I really don't appreciate them using she slept her way up to the top, because as women, and I said, oh, well, there might be some unity after all, right? I appreciated that, because we're still all women and we do have some things in common, regardless of what side of the fence you fall on. We know what it's like to be questioned. We know what it's like to not be heard, not be seen. We know what it's like to have our narrative changed. I don't know about you, but I personally have been in a situation where someone secretly questioned my credentials on something I was already qualified for. And I remember the feeling of, shutting down the meeting and going in a quiet place and being so mad. Like I was so mad. And he did it in a quiet, it wasn't like he did it in a public space, but he did it quietly. And I was just humiliated because I had already had the role. I was already hired to do what I was there to do. And this was someone lower than me who was like, no, let me see your, you know, and so I think you all, I appreciate you saying that we have to make the world ready. Part of the change is that we have to be the change, right? We can't keep standing idly by saying, oh, I hope this works. Let's see what happens. No, it's no longer, let's see what happens. It's let's create the world that we want. Let's make it fit. Let's make it right. Let's say now is the time. Let's stand up. Let's protect. Let's get behind as women and unite. And I'm ready. Are y'all ready?
Ready.
I'm so ready. I'm so ready. Don Nicole, what you said about, we were open this up with, what are we most inspired by? I'm most inspired by the unification that this could have for all women. I feel like it's just, we've all grown up in a patriarchal society raised by women who had it even worse than we did.
Yes.
And as a result, many have worked in environments where they said the women, it was women who were their worst enemy as they were trying to advance in the workplace. The time is now that we stop. The men were sitting back going, what are they doing? Why are they doing this? And now we have such an opportunity to come together and unify and have a voice and recognize that there's so much at stake for women in particular right now. And we really do need to come together. And I think that's what I'm most inspired by.
I love it. Same. Tasha?
I'm inspired by it because, again, and I'll speak on it, the legacy that this will leave.
Yes.
Both of you have daughters. And
Yes.
so I unify in this because I want the path to be better for them.
Yes.
So that they don't come across the very things that Allison just spoke about, right? Or at least it's not as, significant in their world as we move forward. So that is why I feel like it's important to have this unity as women, regardless of what side of the aisle you're on. We've all faced very similar stories.
Yes.
Where this is the time that we can rewrite a little bit of that history moving forward.
Wow. I just, speaking of just the unification, because I'm listening to you speak, both of you, and I'm like, a feeling is coming over me like, yes. I do think this is the time to unify, because you're right, as women, we've also been pitted against each other and we've had to compete. And this time we don't have to compete. We just need to unify. I was so happy when I started to see women who I thought would be a little bit of an issue for VP Kamala Harris come together, like our speaker, Nancy Pelosi, and say, yes, every yes she got from a woman, I said, it's happening, because all we have to do is whoever has the shot, you all know, let's be whoever has it, take it. We're going to get behind you. And I think that's what this time symbolizes. She's got a chance. Let's rally behind her. Let's support her. No, we don't know what the future holds. Do we ever? Do we ever know what's going to happen until someone steps up to the plate and does what they need? But I know one thing, we're going to give her a fighting chance. That's what I know, right? She deserves it, and she's earned it. And that's the thing. She's earned, we can see that. She's earned the right to be here. And I'm going to tell you what I'm impressed with. In a very short time, no matter what you say about her, this woman has shown leadership in mobilizing. So she can raise money, she can mobilize teams, 40,000 people on a Zoom, and they're repeating that now. I'm sure you all saw that. One group did it, and we've even been reached out to. Queen City Women in Business has been reached out to help organize fundraising events here in the Southeast. We're so proud to have that opportunity. But look at the type of leadership it takes to raise that, to know just what the play is immediately. It's like she's been practicing for 4 years. If this happens, here's the play. And she did it, and I appreciate that. So, yeah. Wow. Well, thank you all tonight. Are there any parting words you want to say before we go? First of all, I appreciate your insight. I appreciate your time. This has been so fun, just having a chance to powwow and really unpack all this. But any lasting words before we get ready to come to a conclusion?
I would say thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this. I think more of these type of conversations as we lead up and as she goes into office are very important to helping break the stigma and make the change that we're asking for. So thank you for being diligent and thoughtful in pulling this together, Don Nicole.
Thank you. Thanks for saying yes. Yeah.
I want to echo that. Thank you so much for having me here. And thank you for the important work that you do, that you both do to unify women and to support women who are founders of their own companies and really changing the stats. And I'm left with, I'm so inspired, first of all, by this conversation and just to get to be in the company of both of you. But I dream of a world where we're not surprised by unity, right? And so I think we were all pleasantly, but I want to be in a place where we're not surprised by that women do come together and do amazing things when we really realize our power and that we are much stronger together than we are apart. I think we can just make an entirely different world for our daughters. So I'm just really inspired by that, and so inspired by the work that you both do. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank both of you. And I appreciate us being in a position to lead this conversation. We're going to have plenty more. Thank you both for your time. This has been great. And stay tuned for the next chapter, ladies. Let's go. Who's ready to go? Woo!
Let's go.